It's been a hard day's night.
The glorious Technicolor 60s. The historical and cultural legacy of that decade still resonates down the ages. Man landed on the moon, makers of caftans became millionaires. Oh, and there was also this little lot. Yes, the Beatles. John, Paul, George and Ringo. Wherever you turned in the 60s, they were always there with a new chord or a new moustache. They defined the decade for an entire generation. And staggeringly, the Beatles industry still hasn't really slowed down, even though the band broke up in 1970. Nowadays we have biographies, films and memoirs, and there isn't a day of their lives together that hasn't been documented, analysed, contextualised and pored over. Except one, perhaps. One little Beatles mystery that no one has ever heard about. Not until now. Because in 1967, a month before they made their by now famous visit to Bangor to see the Maharishi, the four Mop Tops came here to 23 Chemical Terrace, Tonypandy, to spend time with a guru of a different sort, champion pigeon fancier Tom Morris.
I remember the Beatles now, but I didn't know they'd come here, did they?
I've never ever heard
Not
of
me.
it.
Yeah. And I've lived here all my life in Tonypandy, you know.
Do you remember the time in the 60s in Tonypandy when the Beatles came here?
No, I can't remember coming to you, no.
And it is fact that they were staying here.
Because apparently they came here in 1967 and spent some time with a pigeon fancier called Tom Morris, who lived in Tonypandy.
Oh, no, I'm not quite sure.
No?
Perhaps would know them if we seen them, but
yeah,
can't
but not
think
by
of
name.
who they are.
Tom Morris.
I never actually met Tom, but I knew of him. He was quite a character, and he attracted people to his loft.
Tom Morris used to live at 23 Chemical Terrace with his wife Eileen and his 48 pigeons. Sadly, the entire street was demolished in 1983 to make way for a spa mini-market. Hi, Eileen.
Oh,
Tom passed away 2 years ago, but his widow Eileen is still very much with us, and she lives just across the road in a new sheltered housing scheme for the elderly called Glanravon House. She and her friend Betty Williams kindly agreed to meet me to discuss what happened during that eventful period in 1967.
oh yes, the spa's marvellous. Did you get, they've had a milk over there, you know about that.
Oh, right.
The one was selling them for, I can't remember, 24 pence.
Yeah.
With the
They do taste like bacon.
when the Beatles,
and chicken. Yeah.
Eileen, sorry, could I? No, it's okay.
Did you want a cup of tea?
Yeah, that's fine, but don't.
Coffee, Mum.
Yeah, coffee, but actually don't.
Coffee, is it?
Actually, Betty, if you put the water, we'll probably have.
Do you want coffee, mate?
We'll probably have to re-record. If you put the water on the kettle like that, it'll probably make a noise. We probably have to start recording it. But actually, what I wanted to ask you is about, the Beatles when they came.
Toilet all over there, it's cheaper.
Oh, is this your cat? There's a cat coming now.
I didn't get cat food.
I'm allergic to cats.
No, Blodwyn. No. Shut down. Right.
With Blodwen the cat ushered out, I decided to try again. So these are the famous Tom Morris diaries that everybody's been talking about.
Of course, when we moved here, everything was in boxes, and when I came to do a bit of hoovering, and there they were all behind the hoover, of course, spiders and all. I hate spiders.
Oh, no, I don't like spiders.
No. My father, when he was a coal miner, see my father, and he terrified
Eileen, sorry.
of a spider.
If we could get
I
back
mean,
to...
if you think about it, they would see all kinds of things down
Eileen,
there,
sorry.
rats.
Eileen, sorry, if we could just get back to
I'm
the
so
diary.
sorry.
No, it's just because what I was interested in asking you about, because obviously they've attracted a lot of attention, and you've been offered a lot of money for these diaries as well.
Oh, but you know, Irene, how can you put a price on your husband's handwriting?
Whilst the Tom Morris diaries may not have been for sale at any price, Eileen did kindly allow me to borrow them. I took a photocopy to the home of renowned Beatles expert and author Martin Stanbrook of Liverpool John Moores University. So Martin, what's the significance of the discovery of these diaries, would you say? I mean, how important are they?
Well, it's difficult to put it in perspective. I mean, I'll give it a go. You've got the Dead Sea Scrolls, you've got the Tomb of Tutankhamun, penicillin, but they all pale into insignificance when you put them against the diaries discovered in 23 chemical terrorist Tonypandy.
That's overstating it a bit, surely.
I don't know, I don't think so. I mean, if you think the Beatles were a true phenomenon of the late 20th century, I mean, culturally, musically, and I'm always telling my students as well, socially as well, they were, historically, they're a huge phenomenon. So I don't think it's overstating it at all. Let's say what Eileen discovered that day when she was looking, what was she looking for?
I think it was a Hoover.
Looking for a Hoover, yeah. I mean, what she found is basically the eighth wonder of the world.
Martin told me that he wasn't at all surprised that Eileen had been offered money for Tom's old diaries. He told me that, if anything, the sum of £5,000 was somewhat conservative.
Well, yeah, the marketability and the collectability of anything to do with the Beatles, I mean, it's rocketed in recent years. Yeah. If you think Ringo's Ludwig drum kit went for close on £2 million.
Really?
Yeah, John Lennon's Tooth, that went for a fortune.
I read about that.
Yeah, and George Harrison's Y-fronts, they went to a Japanese collector for an absolute fortune. Yeah, they're now in a museum there between General MacArthur's stuffed penguin and one of Gandhi's slippers.
God, that's ridiculous. But you're obviously a bit of a collector yourself. I mean, looking around your flat here, I mean, you got bits and pieces as well.
Yeah, but I haven't got the money to compete, with the big boys and that, but I've got a few bits and pieces.
Yeah, I mean, you were telling me earlier on about this, which
Let me show you this. Yes, this is a 1963 Electrolux fridge.
Yeah.
And this was in Paul McCartney's flat. Had it installed just after their first American tour.
Amazing. So this is actually Paul McCartney's old fridge.
Let me show you this.
The light still works.
The light still works. Things were built to last then. And if I can, excuse me, I'll just move that out of the way.
What's that smell?
Well, that is a piece of cheese that Paul McCartney left in there.
You're joking.
In 1963. And if I just turn around there, you can just see his tooth marks.
Oh,
we had a little nibble.
That's amazing. I asked Martin to read out an extract from the Tom Morris diaries. One of the most celebrated passages concerns the time he met Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr after a talk he gave in Kent called Pigeons and Their Ways.
So you want me to read this now?
Well, as long as you're happy to do so. I mean,
I'm not an actor or anything.
Oh, it doesn't matter.
Are you sure? All right, I'll give it a shot. Halfway through, two young men came in, both long-haired. One had a big nose. Expected the worst, but both sat down and listened intently. And at the end, they asked lots of questions about pigeons. Invited me to their hotel, but politely declined. Gave them my address back in Pandy. Said if they needed more information, they were welcome to correspond. They thanked me and left. Everyone seemed very excited. Fancy that, they kept saying. Who'd have believed it? Yes, I said, nice to know that not every young man these days is obsessed with beat music and drugs.
That's great, thanks. I mean, what I like about that is the fact that, Tom obviously had no idea who these two were.
No, yeah. Well, he clearly heard of the Beatles, but he had no idea what they looked like.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how excited I am to be holding this in my hand. I mean, you can just feel the electricity, can't you? The history.
Yeah.
Magic.
Yeah, I suppose, but it's only a photocopy.
If you've got a heavy pigeon, forget it.
Really?
Because, they're just using all their energy just to keep buoyant.
I wanted to find out more about the appeal of pigeon fencing. What was it that had drawn the Beatles towards it? Why was it so special?
It's a very enjoyable sport, and when my alarm goes at 5:30 in the morning, I'm eager to get up and eager to get up the loft, and my son is the same. And most fanciers are like that.
Clive Harris is secretary of the Rhondda Valley Pigeon Federation.
Feather quality must be silky.
Really?
A good pigeon, you can put in a bucket of water, come back out and still dry.
Really?
Whereas the majority, they're saturated.
Yeah.
Waste of time.
Really?
Doesn't work.
Come on. Making each day of the year.
So why do you think somebody like the Beatles were so interested in pigeon fencing?
I would have thought that it's a type of release. Where pigeons are kept normally, particularly in the valleys. Although they've heard of the Beatles, probably they wouldn't recognise the Beatles. I think it's probably down to that.
Can I ask you about Tom Morris? Because he was quite famous around South Wales, but also his fame extended beyond Wales. I mean, obviously the Beatles had heard of him, and he was... What do you remember about him?
He was a character and probably promoted the betterment of the pigeon world.
So it's no surprise to you that somebody like the Beatles, somebody as world famous as that, would have heard about him and would have come here to meet him and talk to him?
If you'd have said in Wales in those days, who is the man to visit, it would be Tom.
It's not every day that a world-famous pop group turns up on your doorstep, but that's what happened one evening in 1967. The Beatles turned up here, but world-famous or not, nobody in Tonypandy recognised them.
Well, we didn't have a clue who they were, did we, Bet?
No.
And they were in a hell of a state,
They
remember?
were, yes.
Eileen Morris and her friend Betty Williams take up the story.
Turned up at the front door. They were dressed like coal miners, and they were
filthy.
They were filthy.
Yes.
They were
The
dressed-
caps and all. And
They were dressed up as miners,
They
were
had a
they?
Davy lamp.
Yeah.
I think one of them had a canary.
Ringo.
I expect
He had a
Ringo
canary.
had a canary.
Really?
Yeah.
And they certainly didn't look like a pop group.
No, and they were filthy. Do you remember, Bet? They were
Yes, they
filthy.
were,
They didn't know, see.
They were covered in coal dust.
But I do remember Tom got the big bath out because we still had a tin bath
Yes.
on a nail. And Tom said, look at the state on these boys. But we put the water in and we put them
front of
in
the fire, wasn't
in
it?
front of the fire. We got the brush. I said, look, I haven't got, I got like a, well, it was like a scrubber brush.
Yeah.
That must have been really painful, was it?
Oh, I scrubbed and I scrubbed because the thing about coal dust is oily. It's quite oily.
Yeah.
And I was
And it gets
scrubbing like hell
into the skin.
to get into
right
the
in.
pores.
Oh, that...
And they screamed like hell. And I think there was one of the songs must have come out of that. Because after that, some of the songs that they done was
They
screaming
weren't so
like hell.
good, were they,
No,
after that?
screaming like hell.
It wasn't so good after that.
During the next few days, the friendship and bond between Tom, Eileen and the Beatles intensified. So much so that one Saturday night, they all went down to the Tonypandy Miners' Institute for the weekly cabaret.
Right, Tuesday, knees up night at the Institute.
I invited Martin Stanbrook to read out another extract from the Tom Morris diaries.
The boys came with me and Eileen. Yanto got up and played Chupi Coming Round the Mountain on the piano, and Dillis did the can-can as usual. And it says brackets, really, I wish someone would have a word with her.
Great.
Close brackets. And to my surprise, Paul got up and sang Yesterday. And although we all applauded politely, I think that privately we all agreed that he was no Matt Monroe.
In the Liverpool area, it's very popular.
Clive Harris.
I got no doubt that they had some connection in their childhood of seeing pigeons racing or visiting a pigeon fancier, this type of thing.
Yeah. And possibly Tom himself. He may have appealed to them as somebody who was almost like a grandfather figure to them, I suppose.
Knowing of Tom, I can quite imagine that, because he did have a special personality, explaining to them how he looked after his pigeons, what the commitment was, etc., etc. He certainly had an influence.
Dr. Marion Payne from the University of Los Angeles has developed a theory called purified grandfather syndrome. I caught up with her while she was over in the UK delivering a series of seminars at Cambridge University. Dr. Payne, thank you so much for agreeing to
I
talk
can
to
only
me.
spare out a second.
I
I've
know,
got a seminar.
I know.
in a minute.
I appreciate your time. I really do.
Yeah.
But I was just wondering whether you could explain very quickly the purified grandfather syndrome that
Right.
you wrote about.
Okay, sure. Right, well, okay, just so we'll wait here a moment.
Right.
Right, this theory was based on research I conducted with Hispanic children
Right.
of the Tenderloin district of San Francisco. Now, these kids have been nurtured and culturally defined within a rigidly urban environment
Right.
and were dislocated from direct parental influence
Okay.
through various factors.
Right.
Okay. So the unsettling pace of the children's development made it difficult for them to accept the authority of their parents. Now their parents were too close.
Okay.
So these kids needed someone with like a distance, someone with a pre-media conception of reality. that kind of thing. You understand? I
Kind
gotta
of,
go.
but it's quite complicated. But basically, I suppose what you're saying is that, do you think that Tom Morris represented this kind of grandfather, I don't know, figure of some sort?
Okay. So what? Right. The Beatles, they were like these kids. Okay.
Right.
They were searching for a connection to something that could cut through the false world of show business they found themselves in, and sort of ground them in something sort of truer and firmer. And Tom Morris was like a grandfather.
Yeah. That's
like
what
a
I thought.
grandfather
Yeah.
symbol, if you like, and he was like the important
Fascinating.
plank here. So not the
Not the pigeons.
Not the pigeons. Not the pigeons. In the end, the pigeons were they're like nothing more than like a red herring. Okay, so I gotta go. So
Dr. Payne, they're ready for you in the hall.
right. Okay. So sure. Okay. I'll have to. Gotta go to my seminar.
One more thing, because
Is there like a fee for this?
well, I'm sure we can arrange something. But
Sure. Great. Okay.
Dr. Payne, could I ask you one more thing, Dr. Payne? Could I just ask you? It's about the.
They were close-minded when they. Do you remember that time after the bingo?
That was very funny, wasn't it?
What happened after the bingo?
Well,
We all smoked then in them days, innit? And I don't know what they were smoking, but they had a different smell. And Tom said, what was that? Oh, Tom.
it was like a London thing.
He said, that's right, special woodbines, Tom, he said.
You called them a what? A special woodbine?
Special woodbine.
Yeah.
And Tom said, he like Capstancy, Tom did. He said, let me try one of them.
Try one of those,
Yes,
yeah.
and he did, and he got all relaxed and was laughing when he told me.
He couldn't stop laughing.
Couldn't stop
could he?
laughing. Yeah, so, and it was George, I think, said to him, have another one of them now, Tom. And so we had another one, and Ringo sitting there now with his bloody canary. I don't know if it was a real one or a stuffed one, I can't remember.
I can't remember.
No, it wouldn't have been
I
a
don't
real
know.
one. But even if
Might
it
have
had,
been.
Tom would have known. He would have been
Yes,
able, I think, to be honest with you, he could handle any bird.
Any birds, yeah.
I think in the end he said, I know what that canary is saying. To me.
As I was leaving Glanravon House that afternoon, Eileen ran out after me. She was a bit breathless and was holding a cardboard box which was covered in old spider's webs.
Yeah.
Before you go,
Oh.
I found these behind the mop bucket. I don't know if they're of any use, sorry, about the cobwebs.
Oh, wow.
They were from Yanto's house.
Who's Yanto?
Yes, neighbour.
Is it?
And, well,
I shut the door because of the draft.
and a cat.
Wow.
What Eileen presented me with was a box full of reel-to-reel tapes. Yanto Price, who sadly passed away in 1989, was a keen birdwatcher, and he used to record some of their songs on his Bush tape recorder. Eileen told me that the Beatles had borrowed this tape recorder to make some recordings of their own. What I held in my hands was a gold mine. I could barely contain my excitement at what treasures this little box might contain. Sadly, I didn't have a reel-to-reel recorder to play them on, but I knew a man who did.
Must be like to work here. Oh, well, it's great, but I've been here years, man. You know what I mean? So it's
Sam Honeychip is an old friend of mine. We were at university together, but Sam left after his first year to become a sound engineer. Since then, his career has taken off in a big way, and he's worked with everyone from Coldplay to Springsteen.
Yeah, well, it's I've been here ages, mate. It wears off, do you know what I mean? But it's Abbey Road, isn't it?
Do you still get stuff? I caught up with him at Abbey Road's famous Studio 2, where he was working on the new U2 album. He kindly spared me an hour or so of his time. I found his tapes, you see, because they were handed to me. They were made back in the 60s by a chap called Yanto Price. I mean, I know it's... I know nothing about tapes, but it looks to me like it's really
What's that mean,
old-fashioned.
Yellow Warbler? What's that?
Well, he was a keen bird fancier, apparently.
Oh, right. And I think they supported the Kinks in
Did they?
in '71, I think. Yeah. I don't hold your hopes up. These old things, the EQ's going to be all over the place. They're in a right 2 and 8. Look at them. But we'll bung them on. We'll have a listen and we'll see what comes out.
You've got time to do this. So
Sure, if we're quick. I mean, like I say, Bono's in today. He's in a right shitty mood. He's
Is he?
Yeah. He's lost the keys to his Porsche, right?
You're kidding.
Yeah, and he's been looking everywhere. Still hasn't found what he's looking for. So I think it's one of those hybrid ones.
Is it?
Yeah, I think it's. Oh, here he is. Yeah.
Oh God, is that him?
It's a misnomer. You still gotta have the keys on you. I can't find them.
He's not. He's a
Have
good.
you seen my keys?
Listen.
Shall I back up?
Where's the
No.
edge?
He's all right.
The edge!
He's a good enough bloke, but you know he's. Well, you know he likes everything to be just so. Do you know what I mean? And when it's off a bit, up there. Yeah.
You get on with him all right, though, do you?
No, he's a nice enough bloke. Yeah.
So I don't want to get on the wrong side of it.
No. He comes in, he does his stuff.
Should we do this and get it?
Yeah,
done
let's
quickly,
whip him on.
just in case?
We'll have a little look. Like I say, conditions all over the place, so we'll just have a listen and see what we can get out. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, cheers.
He's always doing this.
Is he?
Yeah. Last week he lost his sandwich. Yeah.
You're joking.
No. Yeah. It turns out it was in Antwerp. He had it flown over. Right.
Quality's good. I mean, it's just a bit of bird song.
Yeah. It's not as bad as I thought, actually. Yeah.
But oh, that's a bit of music on there.
What's that?
That sounds like the Beatles, doesn't it?
It's incredible. How much of this stuff have you got?
The Beatles may have found a level of sanctuary and peace in Tonypandy, but that tranquility was ruined one Tuesday afternoon with the arrival of an unexpected and most unwelcome guest.
Oh, that's right. There was a knock on the door, wasn't there? And that little man there with a bushy head, who was covered in bangles, girly, you know.
Oh,
and
Eileen Morris.
With a squeaky voice and all. Oh, man, he was like.
Yeah.
And he said, you got the Beatles here? No. I said, the man from the council come here last week and sorted that out.
Yes.
He was the Marrakesh, what was it?
The unexpected visitor was the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi.
He didn't have anything on his feet.
No, and that's in Tonypandy. He must have been freezing. Oh, he'd always found a twist, didn't he? Couldn't stop giggling all the time.
How did they respond, when the Maharishi suddenly turned up like this for them?
Tom was angry when he...
Yes, he wasn't happy
He could
about
get like
it.
that, see. And George was apparently even he didn't like it, did he, Bet?
No.
Well, of course, Tom then was trying to be polite. And Tom said if he wanted to come and see his pigeons. And they took him to the loft. And he was going on about, we'll have something about that one would be nice in a curry.
How did Tom react to that? I mean, he
Nearly hit him over the head as a coal scuttle.
Well,
And of course, once Tom's tactics had failed, I said, look, come on, I said, let's all go down to the chip shop. But of course, that was a big mistake.
So they all went down to Fat Ivan's Chip Emporium, together with Yanto Price and his ever-present tape recorder. He pressed record, and that tape recording survives. I had an urgent call from Sam Honeychip.
The quality's what it is. It's been in a damp loft for however long. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. But what we got here, I think if you listen, you can just about hear it. Okay. Right? And just about hear it. Now, listen now, yeah.
Oh wow.
Those boys down with Tom, is it?
So
yeah, that's right.
It's something to do with the
right, boys, what's it
chippy or something.
That would be Fat Ivan's Chip Emporium.
Yeah. Well, listen to this, eh?
Bit of chips and pasties, I bet. We've got all sorts. We've got cheese and onion pasty, they new. Vegetarian. Nonsense. I got a meat and potato over there. Got cheese and onion pie. We got minced beef and onion pie. Chips. Like you want chips, Bet?
Yeah, we'll definitely take some chips. You're a vegetarian, though, aren't you, mate?
We'll have to think what to eat.
We've just ordered egg and chips and beans if they've got them.
We got chips. Like we cook them in beef fat. That's not a problem, is it? Because they're mostly potatoes still, isn't they?
Is that a problem for you, Maharishi?
We'll have something suited to the individual.
I tell you what, I've got some curry sauce out the back, mind.
Irish or Chinese?
Warm up the curry sauce, will you, love?
Anybody want a cigarette?
Hey, you want salt and vinegar, Bet?
Yeah, loads of it.
I
like
can't say
vinegar,
yes or no, but I think so.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah.
Have you, Sam?
It's all right, though.
Not so bad, huh?
Bloody hell. It's the Beatles! What? Come on, Maharishi. Hold my hand. Put your sandals back on.
Oi! Come back! Who's going to pay for all this food?
Oh, well, that was it. Someone in the town, had recognised see? Well, the next morning he was gone.
Eileen Morris.
Remember that? There's a story then, see, in the morning in the leader saying that the Beatles had been seen in the chip shop in Pandy, because there was no pictures on the thing. So
I suppose if there weren't any pictures or anything, people must have thought it was a hoax, wasn't it, or a joke, wasn't it?
Yes. Well, neither me nor Tom had known who they were. It's funny, really.
Whether Tom Morris or his pigeons had any tangible benefits for the Beatles is almost impossible to calculate. But it is interesting to speculate whether he served as a catalyst for a new maturity in their lives and music. By the spring of 1968, the Beatles were in Rishikesh, India, with a Maharishi, but Tom Morris had not been forgotten. The gratitude the Beatles felt was reflected in a postcard, which arrived at Chemical Terrace on February the 23rd, 1968.
Right. Dear Tom, as you can see, we are in India. India is hot as hell. Ringo's complaining about the food. Hope you and Eileen are well. Sorry we had to leave so suddenly that day. I'll explain it to you sometime. Thanks a lot for what you did. I don't think you know what you did, but thanks anyway. Best wishes from us all. Love, Paul. Oh, they were sweet, mind they were. Yeah.
The postcard remained on Tom Morris's mantelpiece until the day of his death.
Words are flowing out like endless rain into a paper cup.
What were the Beatles looking for in Tonypandy back in 1967? Some peace? A shred of that blissful anonymity they once enjoyed in their pre-fame days before things got mad? Whatever it was, they felt that Tom Morris represented a world that they wanted to protect from that craziness, which is why they never mentioned it in any of their interviews or itineraries. The story of the Beatles in Tonypandy has been one of the best-kept secrets in the music world. Until now, of course.
Nothing's gonna change my world.
The Beatles in Tonypandy was written and presented by Euron Griffith, with contributions from Clive Harris, Donna Edwards, Airey Thomas, Chris Walker, Vern Griffiths and Gareth Pierce. The producer was Jeff Ballinger.